Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. Today we are going to explore the tea plant, a single evergreen species that quietly produces every kind of tea people drink, with differences in flavor and character, shaped not by different plants, but by how the leaves are handled after harvest. And if you like stories like these, please like and subscribe. Behind the familiar cup is a living plant that grows slowly, responds carefully to its surroundings, and follows patterns that remain steady across many years. Long before tea is brewed or tasted, its story is already unfolding in the field, leaf by leaf. Let's begin. The tea plant is an evergreen, meaning it does not shed all of its leaves at once and restart each year. Instead, it holds onto its foliage continuously, replacing leaves gradually over time. At any given moment, the plant carries leaves of different ages, some newly formed and others that have been working for months or even years. This layered structure allows the plant to function steadily. Because its leaves remain in place, the tea plant maintains photosynthesis throughout the year whenever conditions allow. Older leaves continue capturing light, while newer leaves form at the growing tips. Water and nutrients move upward from the roots in a steady flow, supporting both maintenance and growth at the same time. This balance allows the plant to avoid extremes, favoring long-term stability instead. This evergreen habit is closely linked to the tea plant's long lifespan. Tea plants are not short-lived crops. In cultivated fields, many plants remain productive for decades, and some individual plants are known to be over 100 years old. Their trunks thicken, their root systems deepen, and their growth patterns become increasingly stable. Rather than reacting sharply to brief changes in weather, older plants adjust slowly, smoothing out variation across seasons. In its natural state, the tea plant does not remain low to the ground. Left unpruned, it grows into a small tree that can exceed 30 feet in height. A central trunk develops, branches spread outward, and leaves rise high above the soil. In this form, the plant prioritizes reaching light over producing easily accessible new shoots. Young growth appears at the outer edges and upper branches, far from ground level. This tree form reflects the tea plant's original forest environment, where competition for light shaped upward growth. Taller structure allowed leaves to emerge above neighboring plants, while the evergreen canopy continued functioning under partial shade. The plant's natural shape is efficient for survival, but it is not suited to repeated harvesting by hand. Cultivation changes this form deliberately. In tea gardens, plants are kept low and bushy through regular pruning. Branches are encouraged to spread sideways rather than upward, creating a broad surface of foliage close to the ground. This shape allows sunlight to reach many growing tips evenly and makes the leaves accessible for harvesting. Pruning alters how the plant uses its energy. Instead of supporting height and woody structure, resources are redirected toward producing new shoots near the surface. Each cut stimulates nearby growth, and over time the plant adapts to this pattern. The result is a dense layer of young leaves that renews itself again and again. Within this cultivated structure, not all leaves are treated equally. The youngest leaves and buds are the most valued parts of the tea plant. These appear at the very tips of branches where growth is most recent. At this stage, cells are thin-walled and actively dividing. The leaves are soft, flexible, and chemically rich, carrying compounds that later shape aroma, flavor, and texture. A widely used harvesting standard is known as 2 leaves and a bud. This refers to the unopened bud at the tip of the shoot, along with the first 2 leaves below it. Together, these parts represent a point where tenderness and development are balanced. The bud contains tightly packed cells that have not yet unfolded, while the first 2 leaves have begun to expand without becoming coarse. Leaves that sit lower on the branch are older. Their cell walls have thickened, and their chemistry has shifted toward structural strength rather than rapid growth. While these leaves remain vital to the plant, they respond differently during processing and tend to produce stronger, less refined results. Harvesting focuses on the youngest growth because it reflects the plant at its most active stage. Removing these tips does not weaken the plant when done carefully. Instead, it triggers a response. New shoots form near the cut points, drawing on stored energy and steady nutrient flow. A repeating rhythm develops. Growth emerges, is harvested, and then replaced. This cycle can continue for many years when the plant is well cared for. Because the tea plant is evergreen, this cycle is not limited to a single season. In suitable climates, harvesting can take place multiple times throughout the year. Growth slows during cooler or drier periods and accelerates when warmth and moisture return, but it rarely stops entirely. Even during quieter phases, the plant maintains its structure and prepares for renewed growth. The long life of the tea plant means that each harvest builds upon previous years. Pruning decisions made long ago influence where new shoots appear today. Roots that developed over decades continue supplying water and minerals to current leaves. Each bud carries the imprint of past seasons rather than standing alone in time. This continuity is central to how tea plants are cultivated. They are not managed for quick returns, but for steady performance. Fields change gradually, shaped by repeated actions rather than dramatic interventions. The plant responds best to consistency, adjusting its growth slowly rather than compensating for extremes. The contrast between the tall wild tree and the low cultivated bush shows how the same species adapts to guidance without being altered at its core. The tea plant remains the same evergreen organism, responding to pruning by changing how and where it grows. Its biology stays intact, even as its form shifts. At the most basic level, tea begins as a leaf, yet that leaf is part of a living system built for endurance rather than speed. New growth appears briefly, is harvested, and then replaced, while the plant itself continues year after year. This balance defines the foundation of tea cultivation. Before processing, before brewing, and before taste, there is a steady evergreen plant shaped by time, growth, and repeated care. That living structure is where every cup of tea begins. The tea plant grows best in warm, humid climates, where temperatures remain moderate for much of the year. In these regions, air holds moisture for long periods, and rainfall arrives often enough to keep the soil consistently damp without becoming saturated. This combination allows the plant to maintain steady growth rather than alternating between rapid expansion and stress. Warmth supports active leaf formation, while humidity reduces water loss from the leaves themselves. Regular rainfall plays a central role in how the tea plant develops. Water is needed not only to support photosynthesis, but also to move nutrients through the plant's tissues. When rainfall is evenly distributed, roots can draw moisture upward without interruption, supplying growing tips with what they need to form new leaves. Sudden droughts or long dry spells interrupt this flow, slowing growth and reducing the number of harvestable shoots. The tea plant prefers soil that drains well, even when rainfall is frequent. Its roots require access to oxygen as much as they need water. In soils that hold too much moisture, air spaces between particles fill with water, limiting oxygen availability. This can damage roots and weaken the plant's ability to absorb nutrients. Good drainage allows excess water to move away while leaving enough moisture behind to support growth. Acidic soil conditions suit the tea plant particularly well. In slightly acidic environments, certain minerals become more available to roots, supporting healthy leaf development. Iron, for example, remains accessible in acidic soils and contributes to chlorophyll formation, which keeps leaves green and productive. When soil becomes too alkaline, these nutrients can become harder for the plant to access, even if they are present. The structure of the soil also matters. Loose, well-aerated soils allow roots to spread outward and downward without resistance. This encourages the development of a broad root network, capable of drawing water and nutrients from a wide area. This root system becomes the plant's main buffer against environmental variation, smoothing out short-term changes in rainfall or temperature. While warmth supports growth, the tea plant does not tolerate cold well. Frost poses a particular challenge. When temperatures drop below freezing, water inside plant cells can form ice crystals, damaging cell walls and disrupting normal function. Young leaves and buds are especially vulnerable, as their tissues are thin and actively growing. Even brief exposure to frost can halt growth or destroy new shoots. Prolonged cold has longer-term effects. In consistently cool conditions, the tea plant slows its metabolism, leaf production decreases, and the formation of new shoots becomes irregular. Extended cold can weaken the plant over time, making it more susceptible to disease and reducing its ability to recover when conditions improve. For this reason, tea cultivation is concentrated in regions where frost is rare or absent. Elevation influences these conditions in subtle ways. Many tea-growing areas are located on hillsides or in mountainous regions where temperatures are slightly cooler than surrounding lowlands, but still remain above freezing. These elevations often provide frequent mist and cloud cover, increasing humidity while moderating heat. The result is an environment that slows leaf growth without stopping it, allowing compounds within the leaves to develop gradually. Soil on slopes tends to drain more naturally than soil on flat ground. Gravity helps move excess water away from roots, reducing the risk of waterlogging during heavy rain. Organic matter from fallen leaves and pruned branches accumulates, enriching the soil and improving its structure. This balance of drainage and fertility supports long-term plant health. Within these environments, the tea plant produces leaves at different rates depending on conditions. During warm, moist periods, new shoots emerge more frequently. When temperatures cool or rainfall decreases, growth slows. The plant does not rush to compensate. Instead, it adjusts its pace, conserving energy until conditions become favorable again. The youngest leaves remain the most active parts of the plant during these cycles. Their cells divide quickly when warmth and moisture are present, and slow just as quickly when conditions change. This responsiveness is why harvesting focuses on young growth. It reflects the plant's immediate interaction with its environment, rather than the accumulated effects seen in older leaves. A common harvesting practice is built around this principle. By selecting 2 young leaves and a bud, growers capture growth that developed under recent conditions. These leaves carry a chemical profile shaped by the current balance of temperature, rainfall, and soil nutrients. Older leaves formed earlier reflect past conditions and contribute less to this immediate expression of the environment. Climate and soil work together continuously. A warm day encourages growth, but without sufficient moisture in the soil, that growth cannot be sustained. Heavy rain supplies water, but without drainage, roots struggle to function. Acidic conditions make nutrients available, but only if roots remain healthy enough to absorb them. Each factor depends on the others. Because of this interdependence, tea plants are often grown in regions where natural conditions already meet most of these needs. While management practices can support the plant, they cannot fully replace climate and soil. Irrigation helps during dry periods, and drainage systems assist during heavy rain, but long-term success relies on choosing suitable locations from the start. The tea plant responds slowly to changes in its environment. Improvements in soil structure or drainage may take years to show full effects. Likewise, damage from repeated cold exposure can persist long after temperatures rise again. This slow response reinforces the importance of stability rather than short-term intervention. Over many seasons, plants growing in favorable conditions develop deeper root systems and more balanced growth patterns. Their leaves emerge at a steady pace, and their response to harvesting remains consistent. In less suitable environments, growth becomes uneven, and recovery after harvest takes longer. These differences accumulate over time, shaping the overall character of the plants. The connection between climate, soil, and growth is not visible at a glance. It unfolds quietly beneath the surface and across years of development. Each leaf carries subtle traces of temperature, moisture, and mineral availability from the time it formed. Together, these factors create the conditions that allow the tea plant to grow steadily and remain productive. By understanding where the tea plant thrives and where it struggles, its growth patterns become easier to follow. Warmth without extremes, moisture without stagnation, and soil that supports rather than restricts roots all contribute to a balanced life cycle. This environmental foundation sets the stage for everything that follows in the plant's long, steady production of leaves. The tea plant grows slowly, and this pace defines much of how it is cultivated. From the moment a young plant is established in the field, several years pass before the first harvest is possible. During this time, the plant focuses on building structure rather than producing harvestable leaves. Roots extend outward and downward, anchoring the plant and creating pathways for water and nutrients. Above ground, branches form gradually, shaping the framework that will later support repeated leaf growth. This early period typically lasts 3 to 5 years. During these seasons, leaves appear and mature, but they are usually not harvested. Removing young growth too early would interrupt the plant's ability to establish itself. Instead, energy is allowed to accumulate within the plant, strengthening both roots and stems. By the time harvesting begins, the plant has developed the capacity to replace removed leaves without strain. Once maturity is reached, the rhythm changes. A mature tea plant can be harvested several times a year, depending on climate and growing conditions. In warm, humid regions with regular rainfall, new shoots appear frequently enough to allow repeated harvests. Growth does not happen all at once. Instead, shoots emerge in cycles, with fresh leaves forming after each harvest. Frequent harvesting does not exhaust the plant when it is done carefully. In fact, it encourages continued production of new shoots. When the youngest leaves and buds are removed, the plant redirects resources to nearby growth points. Dormant buds along the branches are stimulated to expand, producing new tips that can later be harvested. This repeated response creates a dense pattern of active growth near the surface of the plant. This process relies on the plant's ability to balance removal with replacement. Leaves are not simply decorative structures. They are sites of photosynthesis, capturing light and producing energy that fuels growth. When some leaves are removed, others continue working, supplying energy to support new shoots. As long as enough foliage remains, the plant maintains this balance. The rate at which new shoots appear depends on environmental conditions. Warm temperatures and adequate moisture support faster regeneration. Cooler or drier periods slow the process, lengthening the time between harvests. The plant does not force growth under poor conditions. Instead, it adjusts its pace, conserving resources until circumstances improve. Within this cycle of growth and harvest, the tea plant produces caffeine as part of its natural defense system. Caffeine acts as a deterrent to insects that might feed on young leaves. When insects consume tissue containing caffeine, it interferes with their nervous systems, making the plant less appealing as a food source. This chemical defense is most concentrated where protection is needed most. Caffeine levels vary across the plant. Younger leaves and buds generally contain higher concentrations than older leaves. This distribution reflects the plant's priorities. New growth is more vulnerable to damage, and protecting it supports future productivity. Older leaves, which have already completed much of their role, contain lower levels. Growing conditions also influence caffeine content. Factors such as sunlight, temperature, and nutrient availability affect how much caffeine is produced and stored in the leaves. Slower growing leaves, often found in cooler or higher elevation environments, may accumulate different chemical balances than those grown quickly in warmer conditions. These variations reflect the plant's response to its surroundings rather than deliberate changes. Because caffeine is part of the leaf's natural chemistry, it is present before any processing occurs. Harvesting captures leaves at a particular moment in their development, preserving the chemical profile shaped by recent growth conditions. Younger leaves, taken soon after forming, carry higher levels, while leaves left on the plant longer continue to change as they mature. The relationship between growth speed and harvest frequency is central to tea cultivation. If harvesting is too infrequent, shoots grow longer, and leaves mature beyond the ideal stage. If harvesting is too aggressive, the plant may struggle to replace lost foliage. Skilled cultivation finds a balance that matches the plant's natural rhythm. Over years of repeated harvesting, the plant adapts. Branching patterns become denser, and growth points are distributed more evenly. This adaptation supports consistent production without requiring constant adjustment. The plant learns, in a biological sense, where growth is expected to occur. The slow beginning of the tea plant's life contrasts with its long productive phase. Those initial years of establishment are an investment that supports decades of harvesting. Each mature plant carries within it the accumulated effects of seasons spent building roots, branches, and chemical systems that regulate growth and defense. This long-term perspective shapes how tea farming is approached. Success does not come from rapid extraction, but from allowing the plant to set its own pace. Harvesting works with the plant's natural responses rather than against them. New shoots emerge, are collected, and are replaced in a steady loop that continues as long as conditions remain supportive. Caffeine, growth rate, and harvesting frequency are not separate factors. They are linked through the plant's ongoing interaction with its environment. Each leaf reflects how quickly it formed, how much protection it required, and how the plant balanced energy between defense and renewal. Through this process, the tea plant maintains productivity without losing stability. Slow growth leads to resilience. Frequent but measured harvesting encourages renewal. Chemical defenses protect the most vulnerable parts. Together, these elements define how the plant sustains itself over many seasons. The result is a living system that rewards patience. Growth unfolds gradually, and responses occur over time rather than instantly. Each harvest represents a moment within a much longer story of development, adaptation, and continued life. Tea plants produce more than leaves. At certain times of the year, they also form flowers, small and pale, appearing quietly among the foliage. These flowers are usually white, sometimes cream-colored, with soft yellow centers made up of clustered stamens. They are not large or showy, and in active tea fields, they often go unnoticed beneath the focus on leaf growth. Flowering usually occurs after a period of steady vegetative growth. Buds form along the branches and gradually open, releasing a light fragrance that can be detected nearby. The scent is subtle and fleeting, and because flowering is not the primary goal of cultivation, these moments often pass without attention. In large plantations, flowers may be scattered sparsely among thousands of leaves. The presence of flowers signals a shift in how the plant is using its energy. Producing flowers requires resources. Sugars created in the leaves are redirected toward forming petals, reproductive structures, and later seeds. This redirection means that less energy is available for producing new leaf shoots during the flowering period. For a plant grown primarily for its leaves, this change matters. Because flowering diverts energy away from leaf production, many growers take steps to limit it. Pruning is one of the most common methods. By trimming branches before flowering becomes extensive, growers encourage the plant to continue producing vegetative growth rather than entering a reproductive phase. This keeps the plant focused on leaf renewal instead of seed formation. Pruning also helps maintain the low, bushy shape required for efficient harvesting. Removing flowering branches redirects growth back into younger shoots closer to the harvesting surface. The plant adapts to this pattern, producing fewer flowers and more leaves in response to repeated trimming. Despite these practices, tea plants are still capable of producing seeds. After flowering, if flowers are left undisturbed, they can develop into seed pods. These pods mature slowly, eventually containing hard, round seeds. In natural settings, these seeds allow the plant to reproduce and spread. In cultivated fields, however, seed production is usually secondary. Most commercial tea plants are not grown from seed. Instead, they are propagated through cloning. This involves taking cuttings from an existing plant and encouraging them to root and grow into new individuals. Each cloned plant carries the same genetic makeup as the original, ensuring uniformity across the field. Cloning provides consistency. Plants grown this way tend to have similar growth habits, leaf size, and chemical composition. This predictability makes cultivation easier to manage. Harvesting schedules become more reliable, and processing methods can be adjusted to suit a known type of leaf rather than accommodating wide variation. Seed-grown tea plants behave differently. Each seed represents a unique genetic combination. As these plants mature, they can show noticeable differences from one another. Some may grow taller, others more compact. Leaf shape, thickness, and growth rate can vary even within the same field. This variation can be valuable for experimentation, but it introduces unpredictability. Seed-grown plants are often used for breeding or research rather than large-scale production. Growers may identify individual plants with desirable traits and then clone those plants to reproduce those qualities consistently. Seeds still play a role in shaping future generations, even if they are not used directly for commercial planting. Different tea varieties have developed adaptations suited to particular regions. Some are better suited to cooler conditions, while others tolerate heat or higher humidity more effectively. Leaf characteristics vary accordingly. In some varieties, leaves are large and thin. In others, they are smaller and thicker. These physical traits influence how the leaves behave during harvesting and processing. Leaf size and shape affect how moisture is lost after harvest and how easily leaves can be rolled or shaped. Thicker leaves may require longer withering times, while thinner leaves respond more quickly. These differences do not come from processing alone. They are rooted in the plant's genetics and its long-term adaptation to specific environments. Thickness also influences how leaves protect themselves. Thicker leaves often have tougher cell walls, offering greater resistance to environmental stress. Thinner leaves may be more sensitive, but can also carry different chemical balances that influence flavor development later on. Each variation reflects how the plant balances protection, growth, and resource use. Through flowering, seed production, and cloning, the tea plant demonstrates flexibility without losing its core identity. It can reproduce naturally or be guided through human intervention. It can vary widely or remain uniform, depending on how it is propagated. These choices shape not only how the plant grows, but how entire fields are managed over time. The decisions made at this stage influence what happens later in processing. Leaves shaped by genetics and growth patterns respond differently to handling, oxidation, and drying. The plant's form sets boundaries on what can be achieved after harvest. Even when flowers are pruned away and seeds are never allowed to mature, the plant retains its ability to reproduce. That potential remains quietly present, shaped but not erased by cultivation. The tea plant continues growing, leaf after leaf, carrying both its immediate purpose and its longer biological story at the same time. Green, black, oolong, and white tea all begin as the same freshly picked leaves. What separates them is not the plant itself, but what happens in the hours that follow harvest. Once leaves are removed from the plant, they immediately begin to change. Cells that were once supported by flowing water and nutrients are now cut off, and natural processes begin to unfold. Green tea is defined by speed. Soon after harvesting, the leaves are heated to stop internal changes. This heating can be done by steaming or pan-firing, depending on tradition and region. The purpose is the same in both cases. Heat deactivates enzymes inside the leaf that would otherwise react with oxygen. By stopping these reactions early, the leaf remains close to its original green state. Because oxidation is halted quickly, green tea preserves many of the characteristics present at the moment of harvest. The leaves retain a lighter color and a chemical profile shaped by fresh growth. The result reflects the leaf's original structure and composition more directly than other styles. Timing is critical. Even short delays can allow unwanted changes to begin. Black tea follows a different path. After harvesting, leaves are allowed to oxidize fully before drying. Oxidation occurs when enzymes released during handling interact with oxygen in the air. As cell walls are broken, these enzymes come into contact with compounds inside the leaf, triggering a series of reactions that darken the leaf and alter its chemistry. During this process, leaves change color from green to shades of copper and brown. Aromatic compounds develop and flavors deepen. The full oxidation stage is carefully monitored. Too little time leaves the tea underdeveloped. Too much can push it beyond the desired balance. Once oxidation reaches the intended point, heat is applied to stop further change and stabilize the leaf. Oolong tea sits between green and black tea. Its leaves are partially oxidized, with the degree of oxidation varying widely depending on style. Some oolongs are only lightly oxidized, retaining many green qualities. Others move closer to black tea, developing richer aromas and darker tones. This partial oxidation requires precise handling and repeated assessment during processing. White tea undergoes the least intervention. It is typically made from very young leaves and buds that are allowed to wither naturally before drying. Minimal handling means that oxidation occurs slowly and in limited amounts. Because the leaves are delicate and lightly processed, timing and environmental conditions during withering play a major role in shaping the final result. Across all these styles, processing choices influence flavor more than differences in the plant itself. The same tea plant can produce leaves destined for entirely different outcomes, depending on how they are handled. Processing does not add new substances. Instead, it guides the transformation of compounds already present in the leaf. Fresh tea leaves are highly responsive. Within hours of picking, moisture begins to evaporate, and internal chemistry shifts. Withering is often the first controlled stage. As leaves lose water, they become softer and more flexible. This change allows them to be shaped without cracking or tearing, which is essential for later steps. Rolling is used to further shape the leaves and break cell walls. This physical action releases enzymes and exposes internal compounds to oxygen. The way leaves are rolled affects how evenly oxidation occurs. Gentle rolling leads to slower, more controlled change. Firmer rolling accelerates reactions by increasing exposure. Oxidation itself is not a single event, but a gradual process. As enzymes interact with oxygen, compounds within the leaf rearrange and combine in new ways. Color deepens, aromas develop, and the leaf's character shifts. Monitoring this stage requires experience, as changes continue even after leaves are moved or spread out. Heat is applied to stop oxidation at the chosen point. By deactivating enzymes, heat locks the leaf into its current state. Drying then removes remaining moisture, making the leaf stable for storage. Once dried, most chemical activity slows dramatically, preserving the leaf until it is brewed. Processing is a sequence of decisions rather than a fixed formula. Each step builds on the last, and small changes in timing or handling can lead to noticeable differences. Leaves that were identical on the plant can become distinct through these choices alone. Tea types are defined by method rather than species. The plant provides the raw material, and processing reveals different aspects of it. The leaf carries many possible outcomes within it, shaped by growth and environment. Processing selects which of those possibilities becomes the final tea. From the moment the leaf is picked, time becomes a guiding factor. Delays, temperature, and movement all influence how changes unfold. The transformation from fresh leaf to finished tea is not rushed, but it is never passive. Each stage directs natural processes rather than replacing them. Tea processing works with the plant rather than against it. The leaf's chemistry responds predictably when guided carefully. Green, black, oolong, and white teas are expressions of timing and control, each beginning with the same leaf and ending with a different result. The tea plant responds closely to seasonal change, adjusting its growth patterns as temperature, rainfall, and daylight shift through the year. These changes do not arrive suddenly. Instead, they build gradually, and the plant responds in small, measurable ways. New leaves emerge at different speeds, chemical balances shift, and the character of growth reflects the conditions under which it formed. Spring is often associated with the first major harvest period. As temperatures rise and daylight lengthens, the plant begins producing new shoots more actively. Stored nutrients from the roots move upward to support this growth. Leaves formed during this period tend to grow more slowly than those produced later in the year, as the plant transitions out of cooler conditions. This slower development allows certain compounds to accumulate more evenly within the leaf. Spring harvests are often described as lighter or more delicate. This is not because the plant is weaker, but because growth is measured and balanced. Leaves form with thinner cell walls and a different internal chemistry than those produced during faster growth. The plant is using stored energy carefully, and this restraint is reflected in the structure of the new leaves. As the season moves into summer, conditions usually become warmer and more stable. With higher temperatures and consistent moisture, the tea plant increases its rate of growth. New shoots appear more frequently, and leaves expand more quickly. Cell division accelerates, and leaves reach maturity in a shorter period of time. Summer harvests tend to produce stronger and more robust leaves. Faster growth changes how compounds are distributed within the leaf. Structural elements develop more quickly, and certain protective compounds become more pronounced. This does not make summer leaves inferior. It simply reflects the plant's response to abundance. When energy and water are readily available, growth becomes more vigorous. Rainfall patterns play a critical role throughout these seasons. Adequate rainfall supports steady growth by maintaining moisture in the soil. When rain arrives regularly, roots can function without stress, drawing water and nutrients upward in a continuous flow. Leaves remain hydrated, and new shoots form reliably after harvest. Too much rain, however, can have a different effect. Excessive rainfall can dilute the concentration of compounds within the leaf by promoting rapid water uptake and expansion. Leaves may grow larger, but carry a less concentrated internal chemistry. In addition, prolonged wet conditions can limit oxygen availability in the soil if drainage is poor, placing stress on the root system. Too little rain slows growth in another way. When soil moisture decreases, the plant reduces its rate of leaf production to conserve resources. New shoots appear less frequently, and existing leaves may thicken slightly as growth slows. This response helps protect the plant during dry periods, but it reduces the number of harvestable leaves until moisture returns. The tea plant is particularly sensitive to small environmental changes. Slight shifts in temperature can alter how quickly leaves form and how internal compounds are balanced. A few degrees of difference between day and night can influence growth speed. These changes may not be visible immediately, but they leave traces within the leaf. Because of this sensitivity, tea plants grown in nearby areas can behave differently even under similar conditions. A slight difference in slope, shade, or airflow can change how moisture and heat are retained. One section of a field may warm earlier in the morning, while another remains cooler for longer. These variations influence leaf development. Seasonal change also affects how the plant recovers after harvest. During periods of favorable conditions, new shoots emerge quickly from cut points. When conditions are less ideal, recovery slows. The plant does not force regeneration. It waits, conserving energy until growth can proceed without strain. These cycles repeat year after year. Spring brings renewed but measured growth. Summer encourages speed and abundance. Rainfall either supports or restrains development, depending on its balance. The plant does not experience these factors separately. Temperature, moisture, and light interact continuously, shaping each new leaf as it forms. The effects of one season can carry into the next. Leaves produced during a period of stress may influence how the plant responds later on. Root systems adjust gradually to patterns of moisture and dryness. Plants develop growth rhythms that reflect their long-term environment rather than a single season alone. Tea cultivation often values consistency. Stable conditions allow the plant to settle into predictable cycles. When extremes are avoided, growth remains even, and harvesting can proceed regularly. Sudden disruptions, such as unexpected drought or excessive rainfall, can interrupt these rhythms and take time to correct. Seasonal sensitivity also means that no two harvests are exactly the same. Even when the same plants are harvested using the same methods, leaves formed under different conditions carry subtle differences. These differences originate not in processing, but in how the plant responded to its environment during growth. Through these seasonal adjustments, the tea plant demonstrates a form of quiet awareness. It does not resist change, nor does it rush to exploit favorable moments. Instead, it modulates its growth, responding proportionally to what is available. This responsiveness allows the plant to remain productive across many years. Each season leaves its mark within the leaves themselves. Growth speed, water availability, and temperature shape structure and chemistry together. These influences accumulate gradually, building a record of environmental conditions into each harvest. Understanding this seasonal rhythm helps explain why tea plants are grown where they are and managed as they are. The plant thrives when change is moderate and predictable, warmth without extremes, rain without excess, and gradual transitions between seasons allow growth to continue without disruption. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It is part of what allows the tea plant to produce leaves with such varied character over time. Each season contributes a different expression of the same plant, shaped by the conditions under which it grew. Shade plays a subtle but powerful role in how tea plants grow and how their leaves develop. In some growing regions, plants are deliberately shaded for part of the growing season, either by planting taller trees nearby or by using temporary coverings. This shading reduces the amount of direct sunlight reaching the leaves, changing how the plant manages energy and growth. When sunlight is reduced, photosynthesis continues, but at a slower pace. Leaves do not stop producing energy, but they adjust how that energy is allocated. Instead of driving rapid expansion, the plant shifts toward maintaining existing tissues and refining internal chemistry. Growth becomes more measured, and leaf development slows slightly as a result. This slower pace has noticeable effects inside the leaf. Shade-grown tea often develops higher levels of certain amino acids, which are compounds involved in protein formation and cellular activity. These amino acids accumulate when growth is steady rather than fast, as the plant is not using them immediately for rapid structural expansion. The result is a different internal balance compared to leaves grown in full sun. At the same time, reduced sunlight limits the production of some bitter compounds that are more closely associated with intense light exposure. In full sun, leaves produce higher levels of protective substances to shield themselves from excess radiation. Under shade, this defensive pressure is reduced, allowing the chemical profile of the leaf to shift. Shade-grown tea is often described as sweeter or more rounded, reflecting altered internal ratios rather than added substances. Shading does not weaken the plant when applied carefully. Instead, it acts as a temporary adjustment, guiding how the plant uses available resources. Leaves remain healthy, but their structure and chemistry reflect the gentler light conditions under which they formed. Once shading is removed, the plant gradually returns to its usual growth patterns. Below the surface, the tea plant maintains another important system that supports long-term growth. During periods when conditions are less favorable, such as cooler seasons or reduced light, the plant stores nutrients in its roots. Sugars produced in the leaves are transported downward and held in reserve. These stored resources act as an internal supply, ready to support future growth. This storage allows the plant to respond quickly when conditions improve. When warmth returns or harvesting stimulates new shoot formation, nutrients move upward from the roots to fuel fresh growth. This process does not require immediate reliance on newly formed leaves, giving the plant flexibility and resilience. Growth can resume smoothly rather than starting from depletion. Root storage also protects the plant during dormancy. When growth slows naturally, stored nutrients prevent stress and maintain basic functions. The plant remains stable even when visible activity decreases. This quiet preparation beneath the soil supports the visible cycles of leaf production above ground. Pruning works alongside these internal systems to keep tea plants productive. By removing older branches and excess growth, pruning encourages the plant to direct energy toward new shoots. Cuts are made in ways that preserve balance, ensuring that enough foliage remains to support photosynthesis while stimulating renewal. Regular pruning also promotes even leaf growth. Without it, some branches would dominate, drawing more resources and shading others. Pruning redistributes growth points across the plant, creating a more uniform surface of leaves. This evenness supports consistent harvesting and helps the plant maintain balance over time. Healthy soil underpins all of these processes. Soil rich in organic matter supports strong root systems and helps regulate moisture and nutrient availability. When soil structure is good, roots can breathe, store nutrients, and respond effectively to changes above ground. Healthy soil reduces stress, which in turn lowers the plant's vulnerability to pests and disease. Tea plants can be affected by insects and fungal diseases, particularly when stressed by poor conditions. Strong roots, balanced growth, and stable soil help reduce this pressure naturally. Rather than relying on constant intervention, many traditional farms focus on maintaining overall plant health so that problems are less likely to take hold. Shading, nutrient storage, pruning, and soil health are interconnected. Shading alters leaf chemistry. Roots store the results of that chemistry for future use. Pruning directs where stored energy is spent. Soil supports every stage of this exchange. None of these elements works in isolation. Plants managed in this way develop a steady rhythm. Growth responds predictably to light and temperature. Recovery after harvest is smooth. Leaves form evenly across the plant. The system becomes self-reinforcing, relying on balance rather than force. These practices reflect an understanding of how the tea plant prefers to operate. It responds best when conditions are guided rather than pushed. Gentle adjustments shape growth without disrupting the plant's internal systems. The result is consistency across seasons rather than dramatic swings. The effects of shading and nutrient storage are not always visible immediately. They unfold gradually, influencing leaf structure and chemistry over multiple harvests. This long view aligns with the plant's pace. Tea plants reward patience, responding more fully to sustained care than to short-term change. By supporting the plant both above and below ground, growers work with its biology rather than against it. Light is moderated, energy is stored, growth is directed, and stress is reduced. Together, these choices help the tea plant remain productive and balanced across many years. Many tea farms rely on careful harvesting practices to protect both the plant and the quality of the leaves. In traditional regions, harvesting is often done by hand rather than by machine. This method allows individual shoots to be selected based on their stage of growth, ensuring that only suitable leaves are removed. Hand harvesting is slower, but it preserves the balance between removal and renewal that the plant depends on. Hand plucking focuses on accuracy. Harvesters move along the rows of plants, selecting 2 leaves and a bud or a similarly defined standard. This selectivity prevents older leaves from being taken unintentionally and avoids damaging nearby growth points. Each cut is small, and over time, these small actions maintain the plant's productive surface without forcing recovery. Machine harvesting approaches the process differently. Mechanical tools cut across the top of the plant, removing all material at a set height. This method increases speed and reduces labor demands, but it sacrifices precision. Along with young leaves, older leaves and stems may also be collected. While this does not stop the plant from growing, it changes how it responds after harvest. When harvesting is less selective, the plant must allocate energy toward replacing a broader range of tissue. Recovery can take longer, and new growth may emerge unevenly. Repeated machine harvesting can alter branching patterns and reduce the uniformity of leaf development. This affects not only yield, but also consistency across harvests. The time of day also matters. In many traditional regions, harvesting is done early in the morning. Cooler temperatures and higher humidity help preserve leaf freshness during removal. Leaves harvested later in the day may lose moisture more quickly, making them more vulnerable to damage before processing begins. Morning harvesting captures leaves while they are still firm and hydrated. This reduces stress during handling and supports smoother transitions into withering and processing. The plant itself benefits as well. Removing leaves during cooler hours places less immediate strain on remaining foliage. The care given during harvesting has a direct influence on the final result. Leaves that are handled gently retain their structure and internal balance. Bruising or tearing can trigger premature chemical reactions, altering how the leaf behaves during later stages. Harvesting sets the initial conditions that processing then builds upon. Beyond individual harvests, long-term care shapes the character of entire fields. Tea plants respond to consistent practices over many years. When harvesting follows predictable patterns, plants adjust their growth accordingly. New shoots emerge where removal is expected and recovery becomes more efficient. This long-term relationship between plant and practice reflects the nature of tea cultivation. It is not driven by speed alone, but by repetition and restraint. Fields are shaped gradually through daily actions rather than sudden interventions. These fields become part of local identity. Long-lived tea gardens often remain in the same place for generations. Families and communities develop routines around planting, pruning, and harvesting. Knowledge is passed down through observation and experience, rather than written instruction. The tea plant itself responds to this continuity. Plants that receive steady care develop resilience. Stress is reduced, recovery becomes reliable, and growth remains balanced. Neglect, by contrast, is not easily forgiven. Irregular harvesting or poor maintenance can disrupt growth patterns that take years to restore. Each cup of tea reflects months of growth and care. Leaves removed in a single morning represent the outcome of long-term attention to soil, climate, pruning, and timing. Brewing releases compounds shaped by all of these factors working together. The act of preparing tea mirrors this process. Hot water draws out flavors that were formed slowly within the leaf. Overbrewing can extract harsher compounds, while careful timing preserves balance. The final experience reflects both the plant's biology and the choices made throughout its life. Tea plants naturally produce tannins, compounds that contribute structure and a drying sensation. The balance of tannins affects how tea feels in the mouth. Leaves grown under different conditions and harvested at different stages carry varying levels, influencing this aspect of the final cup. Soil minerals add another layer of variation. Even plants grown close together can produce leaves with subtle differences. Microclimates within a single field influence moisture, temperature, and airflow. These small variations shape growth in ways that accumulate over time. Tea farming rewards observation. Growers respond to how plants behave rather than imposing rigid schedules. Harvesting adjusts to growth rather than forcing it. This responsiveness maintains harmony between the plant and its environment. The tea plant links agriculture with daily ritual in a quiet way. Its growth cycles shape routines in the field, and its leaves shape routines at home. Each harvest connects long-term cultivation with everyday use. Through careful harvesting and sustained care, the tea plant continues its steady contribution. It grows, responds, and renews itself across years and generations. This continuity allows tea to remain both an agricultural product and a daily presence, shaped by patience rather than haste. Tea leaves contain aromatic oils that develop gradually during processing. These oils are not added or introduced from outside the plant. They are formed from compounds already present within the leaf, shaped through withering, rolling, oxidation, and drying. As moisture leaves the leaf and internal structures change, these aromatic elements become more defined and stable. Inside a fresh leaf, many compounds are held apart by intact cell walls. During processing, physical handling breaks these walls and allows different substances to interact. Enzymes, sugars, and other compounds come into contact, and new molecules form as a result. Some of these molecules are volatile, meaning they can easily move into the air. These are the compounds that later appear as aroma. Drying plays a central role in preserving these aromatic oils. By removing remaining moisture and stopping enzymatic activity, drying stabilizes the leaf's chemistry. Without this step, reactions would continue, and the balance of compounds would keep shifting. Proper drying locks the aromatic profile into the leaf at a chosen point, allowing it to be stored without losing its essential character. Once dried, the leaf may seem inactive, but its internal structure still holds these aromatic compounds in place. They remain bound within the leaf until heat and water are applied. This dormant state allows tea to be transported and stored for long periods while retaining its potential. When hot water is poured over the leaves during brewing, these compounds are released. Heat increases molecular movement, allowing volatile oils to separate from the leaf and enter both the water and the air above the cup. Aroma becomes noticeable almost immediately as these molecules rise and disperse. This release happens quickly and continues throughout the early stages of brewing. Water temperature strongly influences how this release unfolds. Hotter water accelerates the movement of compounds, drawing them out more rapidly. Cooler water slows the process, stretching the release over a longer period. This does not create new aromas, but it changes which ones are most prominent at different moments and how intensely they are perceived. Alongside aromatic oils, tea leaves naturally contain tannins. Tannins are plant compounds that contribute structure and a drying sensation. When they interact with proteins in the mouth, they create a feeling of firmness often described as astringency. This sensation is not separate from flavor. it provides balance and shape to the overall experience. The amount and behavior of tannins depend on several factors. Leaf age plays a role, as younger leaves tend to contain tannins that integrate more smoothly with other compounds. Growing conditions also influence tannin levels, with stress and sunlight affecting their development. Processing choices further shape how tannins behave during brewing. During brewing, tannins are extracted gradually. Early in the process, aromatic compounds dominate, rising quickly into the air and water. As time passes, heavier compounds, including tannins, become more prominent. This staged extraction reflects how these substances are organized within the leaf. Overbrewing shifts this balance. Extended contact with hot water increases the extraction of tannins and other robust compounds. When this happens, structure can overshadow aroma, leading to a firmer and sometimes harsher sensation. This change is not sudden. It builds slowly as brewing continues. The order in which compounds are released mirrors the leaf's internal structure. Lighter, more volatile molecules move first. Larger, less mobile compounds follow. This sequence is why aroma is often strongest at the beginning of brewing, while mouthfeel becomes more noticeable later on. Aromatic oils are fleeting by nature. Once released, they disperse quickly into the surrounding air. As the cup sits, aroma fades as volatile compounds escape. This temporary quality makes aroma closely tied to the moment of preparation rather than to prolonged presence. Tannins behave differently. Once extracted, they remain dissolved in the liquid. Their effects persist as the tea cools and is consumed. This contrast between short-lived aroma and lasting structure shapes the overall experience from first scent to final sip. Different teas emphasize these elements in different ways. Some teas release delicate aromas that appear briefly and fade quickly. Others focus more on structure, offering a firmer mouthfeel that lingers. These differences arise from how the leaf developed on the plant and how it was processed after harvest. Soil minerals and local growing conditions contribute subtle variation as well. Leaves formed under slightly different conditions can develop aromatic profiles that are distinct, even when grown close together. These differences are preserved through processing and expressed during brewing, reinforcing the connection between growth environment and final result. Brewing brings the leaf's chemistry into motion once more. Compounds stabilized during drying are reactivated by heat and water. The process is brief but revealing, allowing the leaf to express what was formed over months of growth and careful handling. Brewing choices influence this expression. Time and temperature do not change what the leaf contains, but they affect what is revealed and when. Short infusions emphasize aroma and lighter compounds. Longer infusions draw out structure and depth. Brewing continues the work of processing rather than replacing it. The tea leaf carries its history forward. Aromatic oils formed during processing remain dormant until water releases them. Tannins shaped by growth and transformation define texture and balance. Together, they create an experience that reflects the plant's full journey. Each brewed cup is a brief expression of long-term processes. Heat and water unlock what the leaf holds, then move on. What remains is an impression shaped by chemistry, timing, and care, made visible for a short moment before fading again. Tea plants growing close together can still produce leaves that taste different. This variation often begins beneath the surface, in the soil itself. Soil is not uniform, even within a single field. Small differences in mineral content, organic matter, and structure influence how roots absorb nutrients and water. These differences shape how leaves develop. Minerals such as iron, magnesium, and potassium are taken up through the roots and used throughout the plant. Iron supports chlorophyll formation, keeping leaves productive. Magnesium plays a role in photosynthesis. Potassium helps regulate water movement within plant tissues. When these minerals are present in slightly different amounts, leaf chemistry shifts subtly as growth continues. These changes are not dramatic on their own. A tea plant does not suddenly produce a completely different leaf because of a small mineral variation. Instead, the influence accumulates slowly. Over months of growth, small differences in nutrient uptake affect how compounds are balanced within the leaf. This gradual shaping becomes noticeable only when leaves are compared side by side. Microclimates add another layer of variation. Even within the same growing region, conditions can differ from one section of a field to another. A slight change in slope can affect how water drains after rain. Areas that receive morning sun warm earlier in the day, while shaded sections remain cooler for longer. Airflow may be stronger along ridges and gentler in sheltered pockets. These microclimates influence temperature, moisture, and evaporation at the leaf surface. Leaves that warm earlier may begin photosynthesis sooner each day. Leaves in cooler or more shaded areas may grow more slowly. These daily differences affect growth rate and internal chemistry, even though the plants share the same general environment. Rainfall interacts with these microclimates in complex ways. Water does not settle evenly across a field. Some areas retain moisture longer, while others drain quickly. Roots in wetter soil may absorb water more readily, supporting steady growth. Roots in drier patches may experience mild stress, slowing leaf formation. These responses are subtle, but persistent. Because the tea plant grows continuously when conditions are favorable, these small differences matter. Growth does not occur in isolated bursts. Leaves form gradually over weeks, responding to the specific conditions present during that time. A leaf that develops during a slightly cooler or drier period will not be identical to one formed under warmer or wetter conditions, even on the same plant. Dormancy plays a role in managing these variations. During less favorable seasons, such as cooler months or dry periods, growth slows naturally. The plant does not stop functioning, but leaf production decreases. Stored nutrients in the roots support maintenance rather than expansion. This pause helps protect the plant from stress and prepares it for renewed growth later on. When favorable conditions return, growth resumes. New shoots draw on stored resources and current photosynthesis. The pace of this renewal reflects how well the plant was supported during dormancy. Plants that experienced stable conditions recover smoothly. Those that faced repeated stress may respond more slowly. Age also influences how leaves express these environmental factors. Older tea plants often produce leaves with deeper, more layered characteristics. Their root systems are more extensive, accessing a wider range of soil nutrients and moisture. This broader access can smooth out short-term variation, allowing leaves to develop with greater consistency. Younger plants, by contrast, have shallower root systems. They respond more directly to immediate conditions. Leaves from younger plants may be more delicate, reflecting recent weather and soil changes more clearly. As roots deepen and expand, the plant's responses become more buffered. Drainage remains essential throughout this process. Tea plants do not tolerate waterlogged roots. When soil remains saturated for too long, oxygen levels drop, limiting root function. This restricts nutrient uptake and stresses the plant. Good drainage allows roots to breathe while still accessing sufficient moisture. Fields with effective drainage support long-term plant health. Excess water moves away after rain, preventing prolonged saturation. Organic matter helps retain moisture without trapping it. Together, these factors create a stable underground environment where roots can function consistently. Because of these interactions, tea farming often emphasizes observation over uniformity. Growers pay attention to how different sections of a field behave. Harvesting may be adjusted slightly to match growth patterns. Areas that grow more slowly are given time to recover, while more vigorous sections are harvested more frequently. These adjustments are subtle and continuous. They do not involve drastic changes, but small responses to what the plants reveal over time. This approach recognizes that variation is natural rather than something to be eliminated. The result is a landscape where no two plants are exactly alike, even though they belong to the same species and are managed together. Each plant reflects its immediate surroundings, shaped by soil, slope, light, and water. These influences are carried into the leaves and preserved through processing. When brewed, these differences may appear as subtle shifts in aroma, structure, or balance. They do not announce themselves loudly. Instead, they contribute depth and complexity across harvests. Patterns emerge, linking certain qualities to specific places within a growing area. This connection between plant and place develops slowly. It cannot be forced or rushed. It emerges through repeated seasons of growth, dormancy, and renewal. Each cycle adds another layer of influence, refining how leaves respond to their environment. Tea plants reward this long view. When conditions remain stable and care is consistent, variation becomes expressive rather than disruptive. Differences add character without undermining balance. The plant remains resilient, adapting quietly to its surroundings. Through soil, microclimate, growth rhythm, and age, the tea plant records its environment leaf by leaf. These records are not written down, but they are present in every harvest. Together, they show how a single plant species can reflect countless small differences across space and time. Tea plants grow continuously when conditions allow, rather than following a single, fixed growing season. Unlike annual crops that complete their life cycle within 1 year, the tea plant remains active across long stretches of time. When temperature, moisture, and light are suitable, new shoots emerge steadily. Growth does not arrive all at once. It unfolds gradually, with leaves forming and expanding at a pace set by the surrounding environment. This continuous growth means the plant is always balancing renewal with maintenance. While new leaves appear at the tips, older leaves continue supporting the plant through photosynthesis. Energy flows through the system without interruption, allowing the plant to replace harvested material without needing to restart from a dormant state each year. This steady activity underpins the tea plant's long productive life. When conditions become less favorable, growth slows rather than stopping abruptly. Cooler temperatures, reduced daylight, or limited moisture signal the plant to conserve resources. Leaf production decreases, and fewer new shoots appear. This slowdown is a form of dormancy, but it is not a complete shutdown. The plant remains alive and responsive, maintaining essential functions while waiting for conditions to improve. During these quieter periods, the tea plant relies on reserves stored in its roots. Sugars produced earlier in the season are held below ground, supporting basic metabolism and protecting the plant from stress. This storage allows the plant to endure unfavorable conditions without damage. When warmth and moisture return, these reserves help fuel renewed growth before new leaves are fully established. Dormancy also protects the plant from pushing growth at the wrong time. Producing new leaves during cold or dry periods would expose delicate tissue to damage. By slowing down, the plant reduces risk and preserves its long-term structure. This restraint reflects an adaptation to environments where conditions fluctuate gradually rather than dramatically. As tea plants age, their responses to growth and dormancy change. Older plants often produce leaves with deeper and more layered characteristics. Over many years, their root systems extend further into the soil, accessing a wider range of nutrients and moisture. This depth buffers the plant against short-term changes, allowing growth to remain more even across seasons. These mature root systems support stability. Water is drawn from deeper layers during dry periods, and nutrients are absorbed steadily even when surface conditions vary. Leaves formed on older plants reflect this consistency. Growth is less reactive to daily fluctuations, resulting in leaves that develop at a measured pace. Younger tea plants behave differently. With shallower roots, they are more closely tied to immediate surface conditions. Changes in rainfall or temperature affect them more directly. Leaves produced by younger plants are often more delicate, reflecting recent environmental influences more clearly. Growth can be vigorous during favorable periods, but slows quickly when conditions shift. This difference between young and old plants influences how leaves are perceived over time. It is not a matter of quality in absolute terms, but of expression. Younger plants offer freshness and immediacy. Older plants offer depth shaped by long-term stability. Both arise from the same species responding differently as it matures. Throughout all stages of growth, water management remains critical. Tea plants do not tolerate waterlogged roots. When soil stays saturated for extended periods, oxygen levels drop. Roots require oxygen to function, and without it, their ability to absorb water and nutrients declines. Prolonged saturation places stress on the plant and can lead to long-term damage. Waterlogged conditions interfere with the balance the plant depends on. Instead of supporting steady growth, excess water restricts root activity. Leaves may show signs of stress, growth slows, and recovery after harvest becomes uneven. These effects can persist even after surface conditions improve, as roots take time to recover. Good drainage prevents this problem. Soil that allows excess water to move away while retaining enough moisture supports healthy root systems. Drainage maintains air spaces within the soil, ensuring roots can breathe while accessing water. This balance allows roots to remain active and resilient. Drainage becomes even more important as plants age. Older root systems occupy a larger volume of soil, increasing the need for consistent oxygen availability. Well-drained soil supports long-term root health, allowing mature plants to continue producing leaves reliably across many seasons. The interaction between continuous growth and dormancy defines the tea plant's rhythm. Growth proceeds when conditions allow, pauses when they do not, and resumes without strain. This cycle repeats year after year, guided by environmental signals rather than fixed calendars. This rhythm supports longevity. By avoiding extremes and conserving energy during unfavorable periods, the tea plant protects its structure. Roots remain intact, branches stay productive, and leaves continue to emerge when conditions are right. The plant does not exhaust itself, chasing constant growth. Over decades, this approach accumulates benefits. Mature plants settle into stable patterns of growth, then recovery. Younger plants gradually develop deeper roots and greater resilience. Fields evolve slowly, shaped by cycles of activity and rest, rather than constant pressure. The tea plant's ability to grow continuously, pause when needed, and resume without disruption reflects its adaptation to steady environments. It thrives not through speed, but through balance. Growth, dormancy, age and drainage work together to support a life cycle built for endurance. Each leaf emerges as part of this ongoing process. Some reflect rapid growth during favorable periods. Others carry the influence of slower development. Together, they show how the tea plant uses time itself as a resource, responding patiently to the conditions around it. Tea farming is shaped by patience rather than speed. The tea plant responds best to steady care applied over long periods, and quick fixes rarely produce lasting results. From planting through decades of harvesting, the plant rewards consistency. Small, repeated actions accumulate, shaping growth patterns that become stable only after many seasons. This patience begins with how fields are established. Tea plants are placed with the expectation that they will remain productive for many years. Spacing, soil preparation, and drainage are designed not for immediate yield, but for long-term balance. Once planted, the field develops gradually, and early decisions continue to influence growth long after they are made. Consistency is especially important in pruning. Regular, measured pruning maintains the plant's shape and directs energy toward productive growth. When pruning is done unevenly or infrequently, the plant responds with irregular branching and uneven leaf production. Restoring balance takes time, as the plant adjusts slowly to changes in structure. Soil care follows the same principle. Healthy soil is built over years through organic matter, root activity, and microbial processes. Sudden changes, such as heavy inputs or abrupt disturbance, can disrupt this balance. In contrast, gradual improvements support steady root function and nutrient availability. The plant responds to soil conditions it can trust, rather than conditions that fluctuate sharply. Tea plants respond poorly to neglect. When care is inconsistent, stress accumulates. Leaves may become more bitter, growth may slow unevenly, and recovery after harvest may lengthen. These effects do not always appear immediately. Often they show up over time as the plant's internal balance is disrupted. Bitterness is one way stress can be expressed. When a tea plant experiences strain, such as irregular water supply or poor soil conditions, its chemical balance shifts. Protective compounds may become more prominent, altering how leaves behave during processing and brewing. This change reflects the plant's response to its environment rather than a flaw in handling. Tea farming often focuses on prevention rather than correction. Stable water management, consistent pruning, and careful harvesting reduce the likelihood of stress. When the plant is supported continuously, it has little need to redirect energy toward defense at the expense of growth quality. The rewards of this approach are cumulative. Plants develop predictable growth rhythms, new shoots appear where expected, and recovery after harvest becomes reliable. This predictability allows harvesting and processing to be timed more precisely, reinforcing quality without forcing the plant. Each harvest reflects months of growth rather than a single event. Leaves collected in one morning carry the influence of rainfall, temperature, and care from many weeks before. The plant integrates these conditions gradually, and harvesting captures a moment within that longer process. Tea farming also links agriculture with daily routine. Harvesting often follows established patterns shaped by light, weather, and plant behavior. These routines are not arbitrary. They develop through observation and experience, aligning human activity with the plant's natural pace. Over generations, this relationship deepens. Families and communities tend the same fields, learning subtle variations across seasons and years. Knowledge is built through repetition rather than instruction alone. The field itself becomes a record of long-term care. Long-lived tea gardens often become part of local identity. Plants that have grown for decades or even centuries anchor landscapes and livelihoods. Their continued productivity reflects not constant intervention, but sustained attention applied gently over time. The tea plant itself remains calm and unassuming. It does not demand rapid response or dramatic action. Instead, it signals its needs quietly through growth patterns and recovery speed. When these signals are observed and respected, the plant maintains balance. Every cup of tea reflects this long view. The leaf carries the imprint of steady growth, consistent care, and restrained intervention. Brewing reveals compounds shaped not by urgency, but by patience applied repeatedly. Tea farming shows how long-term thinking shapes outcomes. The plant responds to care that is measured and continuous, rather than intense and brief. Stability allows complexity to develop without strain. The tea plant links weather, soil, and human care across time. Growth unfolds slowly, harvest by harvest. What seems simple in the cup reflects a system that values endurance over speed. The plant rewards those who work with its rhythm. Consistency becomes quality. Patience becomes structure. Over many years, these quiet choices accumulate, sustaining both the plant and the traditions built around it. Tea plants have shaped human movement and settlement in ways that extend far beyond the field. Long before tea became an everyday drink, the plant influenced how people traveled, traded, and chose where to live. Its cultivation required specific conditions, and those conditions guided where communities formed and how roots developed between them. Tea grows best in hilly and mountainous regions, where drainage is reliable and temperatures remain moderate. These landscapes are not always easy to access. Early tea-growing areas were often isolated by terrain, requiring paths to be carved through hills and valleys. Repeated travel along these paths turned them into established routes. As tea cultivation expanded, these routes became more formalized. Leaves harvested in remote regions needed to reach processing centers and markets. Carrying tea required careful handling to protect the leaves from moisture and damage. This need encouraged the development of reliable transport corridors that could be used consistently across seasons. Trade routes connecting tea-growing regions to population centers gradually took shape. Some followed river systems, using water transport where possible. Others crossed mountain passes, relying on pack animals and foot traffic. The movement of tea reinforced these routes, turning them into lifelines for surrounding communities. These pathways supported more than tea alone. Once established, they carried other goods, information and people. Markets formed along the way, and settlements grew where travelers stopped to rest or exchange supplies. Tea did not act alone, but it provided a steady reason for repeated movement that made these connections durable. In many regions, tea cultivation influenced where people chose to settle permanently. Fields were established on slopes where conditions were suitable, and homes followed nearby. Workers needed to be close enough to tend plants regularly and harvest leaves at the right moment. This proximity shaped village locations and patterns of land use. Hilly terrain that might otherwise have remained lightly populated became productive through tea farming. Terraces were carved into slopes, stabilizing soil and creating usable land. Over generations, these terraces became defining features of the landscape, reflecting long-term commitment rather than temporary use. Tea farming also encouraged multi-generational settlement. Because tea plants take years to mature and can remain productive for decades, fields were not easily abandoned. Families invested time and labor with the expectation that future generations would benefit. This long horizon reinforced stability and continuity within communities. Knowledge of tea cultivation accumulated slowly. Techniques for pruning, harvesting, and processing were refined through observation rather than rapid experimentation. Skills were passed down within families and shared locally, embedding tea farming into cultural identity. The plant became part of how communities understood themselves. Trade linked these local practices to distant markets. Tea moved outward from growing regions, while tools, materials, and ideas moved inward. This exchange connected remote landscapes to broader economic systems. Even small villages became part of larger networks through the steady movement of tea. The influence of tea on trade routes extended across continents. As demand grew, new routes were established to reach new markets. Existing paths were reinforced and expanded. Ports developed where land routes met water, allowing tea to travel further and faster. Each expansion reshaped patterns of movement and settlement. Despite this broad influence, tea cultivation remained rooted in place. The plant itself could not be moved freely. It required specific conditions that could not be recreated everywhere. This fixed nature anchored trade networks to particular regions, giving them lasting importance. Generations of farmers often tended the same tea fields. Plants outlived individual caretakers, becoming living links between past and present. Fields carried memory in a physical form, shaped by decades of pruning, harvesting, and care. The landscape itself recorded human presence through these practices. This continuity fostered a strong sense of stewardship. Farmers did not treat tea fields as disposable resources. Damage done in one season could affect productivity for years. Carelessness had long-term consequences. As a result, cultivation emphasized maintenance and balance rather than short-term gain. Settlement patterns reflected this mindset. Homes were built to last. Infrastructure developed slowly but deliberately. Paths, terraces, and irrigation systems were maintained rather than constantly rebuilt. Tea farming encouraged an approach to land use that valued durability. Even today, many tea-growing regions retain this character. Villages remain close to fields. Daily routines follow the plant's needs rather than external schedules. Harvest times still shape community life, reinforcing the connection between people and the plant. The tea plant's influence on human movement is subtle but persistent. It does not force migration through scarcity or urgency. Instead, it draws people into long-term relationships with specific places. These relationships, once established, shape how regions develop over centuries. Trade routes that began with tea often outlasted their original purpose. Even as transportation technologies changed, the paths remained relevant. Roads and railways frequently followed earlier routes laid down through repeated human movement. Tea helped trace these lines across the landscape. Settlement patterns shaped by tea also influenced social structure. Extended families worked together in fields. Responsibilities were shared across generations. Knowledge was valued because it accumulated slowly. These social arrangements mirrored the plant's own long life cycle. Through trade and settlement, tea cultivation connected distant places while anchoring local ones. It linked hillsides to cities, remote fields to global markets. At the same time, it reinforced the importance of remaining in place, tending the same plants year after year. The tea plant does not demand constant change. Instead, it encourages continuity. Routes are reused, fields are maintained, communities persist. These patterns become so familiar that they fade into the background, even though they continue shaping daily life. By influencing where people traveled and where they settled, the tea plant quietly shaped human geography. Its requirements guided movement without force. Its longevity encouraged commitment. Through countless small decisions repeated over generations, tea became woven into the structure of landscapes and societies alike. Tea plants respond to long-term care rather than quick intervention. Their growth patterns reflect conditions that persist over months and years, not short bursts of attention. When care is consistent, the plant settles into stable rhythms. When conditions fluctuate sharply, the plant does not compensate quickly. Instead, it carries the effects forward, sometimes for several seasons. This slow response begins at the roots. Root systems expand gradually, adapting to the structure and chemistry of the surrounding soil. Sudden changes in water supply or nutrient availability do not immediately alter this structure. Roots continue operating based on what they have already developed, adjusting only as new growth occurs. Improvements or damage below ground unfold over time rather than instantly. Above ground, leaves reflect this same delay. New leaves form in response to current conditions, but older leaves remain part of the system, continuing to photosynthesize and support the plant. When conditions improve suddenly, the plant does not immediately produce higher quality growth everywhere. It first integrates the change, then expresses it through new shoots over successive cycles. Quick fixes often fail in tea cultivation. A sudden increase in water or nutrients may boost growth briefly, but if underlying soil structure or root health is poor, the effect fades. The plant returns to its prior pattern once the temporary input is gone. Lasting improvement requires sustained conditions that allow the plant to adjust gradually. Consistency in water management is one of the most important factors. Tea plants respond best when soil moisture remains within a narrow, predictable range. Repeated cycles of drought, followed by heavy watering, place stress on roots, forcing them to alternate between scarcity and saturation. This stress disrupts nutrient uptake and slows recovery after harvest. When water supply is steady, roots remain active and efficient, leaves develop at a regular pace, and the plant replaces harvested growth smoothly. This stability reduces strain and supports balanced chemical development within the leaves. The plant does not need to prioritize defense or survival over growth. Nutrient availability follows a similar pattern. Tea plants require certain minerals in small but consistent amounts. Sudden large inputs can overwhelm root systems or alter soil chemistry in ways that take time to correct. Gradual enrichment allows roots to adapt and integrate nutrients into growth without shock. Pruning practices also demonstrate the value of long-term care. Regular, moderate pruning shapes the plant slowly, guiding where new shoots appear. When pruning is skipped or done aggressively after long gaps, the plant responds unevenly. Some branches dominate while others lag behind, disrupting the harvesting surface. Restoring balance after such disruption takes time. New growth must be redistributed across the plant, and this occurs only through repeated cycles of growth and pruning. There is no immediate correction. The plant requires multiple seasons to settle back into an even pattern. Stress experienced by the plant often appears later in flavor. Leaves formed under strain may carry higher levels of certain protective compounds. During brewing, these compounds can contribute bitterness or a harsher structure. This is not a flaw in processing, but a record of how the plant responded to its environment during growth. Because of this delayed expression, cause and effect in tea farming are often separated by time. Decisions made months earlier influence leaves harvested today. Likewise, choices made during the current season will shape future harvests rather than immediate ones. This temporal gap reinforces the importance of steady management. Tea plants are resilient, but not forgiving of neglect. They can withstand moderate variation when care is generally consistent. Prolonged imbalance, however, accumulates. Recovery requires patience, as the plant rebuilds internal balance step by step. Long-term care also influences how plants age. Tea plants that receive consistent attention develop more stable growth patterns over decades. Their responses become predictable, leaves form evenly, and recovery after harvest remains reliable. These mature plants often show fewer extremes in behavior because their internal systems are well established. In contrast, plants exposed to repeated stress may show irregular growth as they age. Root systems remain shallow or uneven, branching patterns become inconsistent. Even when conditions improve, these plants take longer to respond, as their structure limits how quickly change can be integrated. This difference highlights why tea farming is often described as an exercise in restraint. Doing less, but doing it consistently, produces better results than dramatic intervention. The plant does not reward intensity, it rewards reliability. Farmers working with tea plants learn to read subtle signals rather than waiting for obvious problems. Slight changes in shoot frequency, leaf size, or recovery time indicate shifts in plant balance. Responding early with small adjustments prevents larger issues later on. These adjustments are usually modest: a change in pruning timing, a correction in water flow, an improvement in drainage. Each action supports the plant's existing systems rather than forcing new behavior. These small choices accumulate into meaningful stability. The plant's slow pace also shapes how success is measured. Progress is not judged by immediate yield alone, but by how the plant performs over many seasons. A stable harvest that continues year after year is valued more than a brief surge followed by decline. This long view aligns with the tea plant's natural life cycle. It is a perennial organism built for endurance. Its growth strategies favor survival and renewal over speed. Cultivation practices that mirror this strategy tend to be more effective. By working with the plant's timing rather than against it, growers allow complexity to develop naturally. Leaves carry layered characteristics shaped by steady conditions. Processing, then reveals these qualities without needing to compensate for instability. Long-term care becomes visible in the cup. Balance replaces sharpness. Structure remains firm without turning harsh. These qualities are not achieved through last-minute correction, but through sustained attention applied patiently over time. Tea plants quietly record how they are treated. They do not respond dramatically to brief effort, nor do they forget prolonged neglect. Their leaves reflect a history of conditions integrated gradually into growth. This makes tea cultivation an ongoing relationship rather than a series of isolated actions. Through this relationship, growers learn that the most effective approach is often the least forceful. Stability encourages expression. Consistency allows the plant to settle into its best form. Over many years, these principles shape fields that remain productive and balanced. The tea plant teaches that improvement unfolds slowly. When care is applied evenly and without urgency, growth follows in its own time. This quiet responsiveness defines how the plant thrives and why long-term attention matters more than quick solutions. Tea leaves do not exist in isolation from the water used to brew them. The interaction between leaf and water completes the plant's long journey from field to cup. While the leaf carries compounds shaped by growth and processing, water determines how those compounds are released, in what order, and at what intensity. Water acts as a solvent, drawing substances out of the dried leaf and into solution. When hot water meets the leaf, cell structures soften and open, allowing internal compounds to move outward. This movement is not uniform. Different substances dissolve at different rates, and temperature plays a central role in guiding this sequence. Heat increases molecular activity. As water temperature rises, molecules move more quickly, making it easier for compounds within the leaf to dissolve. Aromatic compounds, which are often lighter and more volatile, are released early. Heavier compounds, including tannins and other structural elements, require more time or higher temperatures to enter the liquid. This stage release creates a natural progression during brewing. Early moments emphasize aroma and lighter sensations. As time passes, structure becomes more noticeable. The balance between these phases depends on both water temperature and infusion length. Neither factor changes what the leaf contains, but both influence what is revealed. Water quality also matters. Minerals dissolved in water interact subtly with compounds released from the leaf. Calcium and magnesium, for example, can affect how certain molecules bind in solution. These interactions influence clarity, texture, and how flavors are perceived. Water that is extremely soft or very hard can shift the balance of extraction. The tea plant's own mineral content interacts with the water as well. Leaves grown in mineral-rich soils may release compounds differently than those grown elsewhere. Brewing becomes a meeting point between the plant's history and the characteristics of the water used. This interaction completes the expression of the leaf. Temperature control is therefore central to brewing. Water that is too hot extracts compounds rapidly, bringing structure forward quickly. This can overwhelm more delicate elements if not timed carefully. Cooler water slows extraction, allowing aroma to dominate longer, but potentially leaving deeper compounds underexpressed. Time works alongside temperature. Short infusions emphasize volatile compounds that dissolve easily. Longer infusions allow heavier compounds to accumulate. The plant's chemistry responds predictably to these variables. Brewing becomes a continuation of the same cause and effect relationships that shape the leaf during growth and processing. The physical form of the leaf influences this exchange. Whole leaves unfurl gradually, exposing internal surfaces over time. Broken or finely cut leaves release compounds more quickly because a larger surface area is immediately exposed. These differences arise from processing choices made earlier, not from brewing alone. As water moves through the leaf, it carries compounds outward and replaces them with fresh water. This flow continues until equilibrium is reached or the infusion is stopped. Stirring or movement can accelerate this exchange by bringing fresh water into contact with the leaf surface. Despite these variables, brewing remains a gentle process. It does not force compounds out of the leaf. It allows them to move according to their physical properties. The plant's chemistry determines the order and intensity of release, while water provides the medium through which this occurs. The tea plant's tannins respond differently than aromatic compounds during brewing. Tannins dissolve more slowly and persist in solution. Their presence shapes mouthfeel and structure. When extracted gradually, they provide balance. When extracted too aggressively, they can dominate the experience. This relationship explains why overbrewing alters character. It is not that the tea becomes something new. It is that the balance between compounds shifts. Structure overtakes aroma. The plant's chemistry remains the same, but what is expressed changes. Brewing also reactivates compounds that were stabilized during drying. Heat reverses some of the rigidity imposed by dehydration, allowing molecules to move freely again. This temporary reactivation is brief. Once brewing ends, the leaf has released what it can, and the process does not repeat. The act of brewing, therefore, represents a final, fleeting stage in the tea plant's life cycle. Months of growth and hours of processing culminate in minutes of extraction. What emerges reflects the entire sequence that came before. This perspective highlights continuity. Brewing is not separate from cultivation or processing. It is the last step in a chain of physical interactions. Each decision earlier in the plant's life influences how it behaves in water. The simplicity of brewing hides this complexity. Hot water and dried leaves appear straightforward, yet the result depends on countless factors integrated over time. The tea plant's chemistry responds consistently, revealing itself through predictable physical laws. Water does not add character, it reveals it. The plant provides structure, aroma, and balance. Brewing allows these elements to appear briefly before fading. The cup holds a momentary expression of a much longer process. Through this interaction, the tea plant completes its journey. Growth, harvest, processing, and brewing align to produce a final experience shaped by patience rather than force. Water becomes the medium through which the plant's history is made visible. Each cup exists only for a short time, yet it reflects months or years of development. When the liquid cools and the leaf settles, the process ends. What remains is an impression shaped by chemistry, timing, and care. Brewing closes the cycle. The tea plant's compounds move from leaf to water and then disperse. The plant itself remains behind, unchanged, while its expression passes through the cup and into memory. Tea plants are resilient, but that resilience depends on steady care rather than tolerance of neglect. Their ability to continue producing leaves year after year comes from maintaining balance within the plant and in the surrounding environment. When that balance is disrupted repeatedly, even a long-lived tea plant begins to show signs of strain, often gradually, rather than all at once. Pests and diseases are part of the tea plant's natural surroundings. Insects feed on leaves, and fungal organisms exist in soil, air, and moisture. Healthy plants can tolerate a certain level of this presence without lasting harm. Problems emerge when stress weakens the plant's internal systems, giving pests or disease an advantage they would not otherwise have. Stress often begins below the surface. Poor drainage can limit oxygen availability to roots. Irregular water supply can interrupt nutrient flow. Compacted or degraded soil can restrict root growth. None of these factors cause immediate failure, but together they reduce the plant's ability to regulate itself. This weakened state affects leaf production and recovery after harvest. Healthy soil provides one of the strongest defenses against disease pressure. Soil rich in organic matter supports diverse microbial communities that compete with harmful organisms. This biological activity helps suppress fungal pathogens and stabilize nutrient availability. When soil structure remains intact, water drains properly, and roots stay oxygenated. Roots serve as the plant's foundation. Strong roots absorb water and nutrients efficiently, supporting steady growth above ground. When roots are compromised, leaves are affected indirectly. Growth slows, and the plant may redirect energy toward survival rather than renewal. This shift alters how leaves develop and how they respond during processing. Pests tend to target young leaves because they are softer and easier to consume. Tea plants naturally produce compounds that discourage feeding, but these defenses depend on overall health. When growth is balanced, young leaves are better protected. When the plant is under strain, these protective responses weaken. Fungal diseases often thrive in environments where moisture lingers. Prolonged wetness on leaf surfaces, overcrowded branches, and limited airflow increase risk. Regular pruning reduces this pressure by improving circulation and allowing leaves to dry more quickly after rain or mist. Pruning also removes older or damaged material that can harbor pests or disease. By keeping the plant structure open and even, growers reduce places where problems can persist unnoticed. Preventative pruning works best when applied consistently rather than only after symptoms appear. Chemical treatments are sometimes used, but many traditional tea farms rely more heavily on maintaining plant health. When soil, water, and structure are well managed, pest pressure remains limited without aggressive intervention. This approach aligns with the tea plant's preference for stability rather than force. Stress does not always show immediately in the field. Its effects often appear later, during processing or brewing. Leaves formed under strain may release harsher compounds or lack balance. Bitterness may increase, and aroma may diminish. These changes reflect the plant's internal condition during growth rather than errors in handling. Because tea plants are long-lived, stress can influence multiple harvests. A single year of poor drainage or irregular care may affect leaf quality for seasons afterward. Recovery is possible, but it requires time and consistent improvement. The plant cannot be rushed back into balance. Resilience increases as plants mature under stable conditions. Older plants with extensive root systems tolerate short-term challenges more effectively than younger ones. Their deeper roots access moisture and nutrients even when surface conditions fluctuate, reducing overall stress. This resilience is not unlimited. Repeated neglect erodes even strong systems. When poor conditions persist, recovery slows, and productivity declines gradually rather than suddenly. These changes accumulate quietly, making them harder to reverse if ignored. The tea plant's response to care mirrors its overall life strategy. It integrates conditions slowly and expresses change over time. Improvements must be sustained to become meaningful. Temporary fixes do not reset the system. Tea cultivation emphasizes preventative care. Addressing small imbalances early prevents larger problems later. Adjustments to water flow, soil structure, or pruning timing restore balance before stress compounds. Healthy tea plants maintain a steady rhythm of growth, then recovery. Leaves emerge predictably. Harvesting does not shock the system. Chemical balance remains even, supporting both flavor and structure. This stability limits vulnerability to pests and disease. When balance is lost, the plant signals subtly. Recovery after harvest slows. Shoots appear unevenly. Leaves may harden or thicken. These signals indicate internal strain. Responding early preserves long-term health. The goal of resilience is not elimination of all challenges, but the ability to absorb them without lasting damage. Tea plants evolved to handle variation, but they rely on stable underlying conditions to do so. Over decades, fields managed with this philosophy remain productive. Plants age gradually rather than wearing out. Quality remains consistent, reflecting cumulative care rather than isolated intervention. The tea plant's resilience is a partnership. The plant provides endurance. Growers provide stability. Together, they maintain a system capable of producing leaves season after season without collapse. Through careful management of soil, water, structure, and timing, tea plants remain balanced. Resilience becomes visible not in dramatic resistance, but in continuity. Growth continues quietly, shaped by restraint and long-term attention. Tea plants do not exist in isolation from the communities that grow around them. Over long periods of cultivation, tea gardens become woven into local identity, shaping routines, landscapes, and relationships across generations. This connection develops slowly, reflecting the long life of the plant itself. In many tea-growing regions, fields remain productive for decades, sometimes centuries. Families often tend the same land across multiple generations, inheriting not only plants, but also accumulated knowledge. Each generation learns the specific behavior of its fields, observing how plants respond to weather, pruning, and harvest timing. This familiarity builds gradually through repetition rather than instruction alone. Daily life in these regions often follows the rhythm of the tea plant. Work schedules align with light, temperature, and growth cycles. Harvesting begins early in the day when leaves are fresh and conditions are cool. Processing follows soon after, shaped by the state of the leaves rather than fixed clock time. These routines become embedded in daily habits. The physical presence of tea gardens also shapes how landscapes are perceived. Terraced slopes, trimmed bushes, and narrow paths form a distinctive visual pattern. These features become markers of place, recognized by those who live nearby. The land itself reflects years of steady use rather than rapid transformation. Because tea plants are long-lived, care decisions carry forward. Choices made by one generation influence conditions for the next. Pruning patterns, soil management, and drainage structures remain in place long after their creators are gone. This continuity encourages a sense of responsibility toward future caretakers rather than short-term gain. Communities built around tea cultivation often value patience and attentiveness. Success depends on noticing small changes in plant behavior and responding early. This approach favors observation over urgency. Knowledge accumulates through watching how plants recover after harvest, how they respond to unusual weather, and how long-term patterns emerge. Tea gardens also influence social organization. Harvesting and maintenance require coordinated effort. Families and neighbors often work together during busy periods, sharing labor and timing. These shared tasks reinforce social bonds and create collective routines tied to the plant's needs. Seasonal changes structure community life. Periods of active growth bring increased activity in the fields. Slower seasons allow for maintenance, rest, and preparation. These shifts are gradual, reflecting the plant's own responses to environmental change, rather than abrupt transitions. Tea cultivation becomes more than an economic activity. It shapes identity and memory. Stories are associated with particular fields, seasons, or plants. Older plants may be recognized individually, remembered for their reliability or character. The garden becomes a living archive of experience. The relationship between people and tea plants encourages continuity rather than replacement. Fields are maintained rather than abandoned. Plants are pruned and renewed instead of uprooted. This approach mirrors the plant's own longevity and reinforces stable settlement patterns. Tea-growing regions often develop a strong sense of place because of this stability. The landscape does not change quickly. Roads, paths, and terraces remain consistent across decades. Even as external influences arrive, the underlying structure shaped by tea cultivation persists. This persistence affects how change is approached. Innovations are often integrated cautiously, tested against long-term outcomes rather than immediate results. New methods are adopted only when they support existing balance. This restraint reflects the understanding that disruption can have lasting effects. Generational continuity also influences how knowledge is valued. Skills are passed down through demonstration and shared work, rather than written instruction alone. Younger members learn by participating, observing subtle details such as leaf texture, growth rate, and recovery patterns. This experiential learning aligns with the plant's gradual pace. Tea plants themselves reinforce this continuity. Their presence anchors families to specific places. Unlike annual crops that require frequent replanting, tea plants remain, creating long-term relationships between people and land. This permanence shapes how communities think about stewardship. The social rhythm of tea cultivation extends beyond the field. Processing, storage, and preparation become part of daily life. Tea is consumed regularly, reinforcing the connection between work and use. The plant's products circulate locally as well as outward through trade. Even as tea reaches distant markets, its origins remain embedded in local practice. Leaves carry the imprint of how they were grown and harvested, reflecting collective care rather than isolated effort. The plant's history remains present, even when consumed far from its source. Over generations, this shared relationship with tea fosters resilience within communities. When conditions are challenging, accumulated knowledge helps guide response. Adjustments are made carefully, informed by past experience. The community adapts alongside the plant. The tea plant does not demand constant attention, but it does require consistency. Communities that work with its rhythm tend to develop long-term stability. Fields remain productive, skills remain relevant, identity remains connected to place. This stability does not imply stagnation. Change still occurs, but it unfolds gradually. New ideas are absorbed into existing systems rather than replacing them outright. The tea plant's slow pace encourages measured adaptation rather than abrupt shifts. Through its long life and steady requirements, the tea plant shapes not only landscapes but social structures. It influences how time is measured, how work is organized, and how knowledge is valued. These influences accumulate quietly, becoming visible only over long periods. Tea cultivation links human life to extended timescales. Decisions are made with awareness of future impact. Care is applied with expectation of long-term return. The plant and the people tending it evolve together. Each harvest reflects this shared history. Leaves collected in the present carry the effects of past care and collective knowledge. Brewing releases compounds shaped by both plant biology and human practice. The tea plant becomes part of daily routine and cultural continuity. Its presence is steady rather than dramatic. Through repeated care and shared experience, it remains woven into community life, shaping identity across generations. Tea plants quietly shape daily routines in places where they are grown, not through urgency, but through steady presence. Their needs are predictable, and that predictability settles into everyday life. Work begins and ends around the plant's rhythms, and over time those rhythms become familiar enough to feel almost invisible. In many tea-growing regions, mornings begin early. Harvesting often takes place during the first hours of daylight, when temperatures are cooler and leaves are firm with retained moisture. This timing is not arbitrary. Cooler air reduces stress on both the plant and the harvested leaves, preserving freshness during handling. Over years of repetition, this early start becomes a normal part of daily routine. As harvesting finishes, attention shifts quickly to processing. Leaves do not wait. Their internal chemistry continues changing once removed from the plant and timing matters. This urgency shapes the flow of the day. Work moves steadily rather than hurriedly, guided by the condition of the leaves rather than by clocks alone. Outside the fields and processing spaces, tea plants still influence daily habits. Meals, rest periods, and other tasks often align around harvesting windows. These adjustments are small but persistent. They shape how days are structured, especially during active growing seasons. Tea plants also influence routine through maintenance tasks. Pruning, soil care, and drainage management are performed regularly rather than occasionally. These tasks are spread across the year, creating a steady pattern of attention rather than bursts of effort. The plant does not demand constant action, but it does require consistency. This regular care creates familiarity. Growers become attuned to subtle signals: a slight delay in shoot emergence, a change in leaf texture, a slower recovery after harvest. These details are noticed because daily interaction makes them visible. Responding to such signals becomes part of routine awareness rather than formal inspection. Beyond work, tea plants shape everyday habits through consumption. Tea is prepared and consumed repeatedly throughout the day. Brewing becomes a familiar act, often performed without conscious thought. This repetition reinforces the connection between the plant in the field and the cup in the hand. The act of drinking tea often mirrors the plant's steady nature. Preparation is simple and unhurried. Water is heated, leaves are added. Time is allowed for extraction. This small pause becomes a recurring moment in the day, shaped by habit rather than intention. Tea's presence in daily life also influences social interaction. Sharing tea marks transitions between tasks. It accompanies conversation, rest, and quiet moments alike. These uses do not require ceremony. They emerge naturally from repetition, embedding tea into everyday experience. In tea-growing regions, this familiarity extends to children. Young people grow up surrounded by tea plants, seeing them as part of the landscape rather than as commodities. Knowledge is absorbed casually through observation. The plant becomes part of what is normal rather than something to be explained. This normalization deepens attachment. Tea plants are not perceived as separate from daily life. They are simply present. Their needs shape routines without drawing attention to themselves. This quiet influence reflects the plant's own understated nature. Daily routines shaped by tea are not rigid, they adjust with seasons. During periods of slower growth, tasks ease. Maintenance replaces harvesting. During active seasons, days fill with more fieldwork. These shifts are gradual, allowing routines to adapt without disruption. This adaptability supports balance. Work intensity rises and falls with the plant's needs. There is little pressure to force activity when growth slows. The plant sets the pace, and daily life follows. Tea plants also influence how time is perceived. Progress is measured in cycles rather than deadlines. Growth unfolds over weeks. Recovery after harvest is watched patiently. This orientation toward gradual change affects how people think about effort and reward. In places where tea is central, this perspective extends beyond agriculture. Patience becomes valued. Attention to small detail becomes normal. The idea that results emerge slowly but reliably shapes broader habits. The quiet presence of tea plants also anchors memory. Seasons are remembered by harvests. Years are distinguished by weather patterns and plant response. Daily routines accumulate into long-term familiarity with the land. As tea plants age, routines remain. Older plants continue producing leaves, and care continues much as it always has. This continuity reinforces stability. Daily life does not need to reinvent itself. It adapts gently as conditions change. Even when modern tools or methods are introduced, daily routines often persist. Innovations are incorporated into existing patterns rather than replacing them. The plant's steady needs encourage this integration rather than disruption. The influence of tea plants on daily life extends beyond those who work directly with them. In surrounding communities, tea shapes rhythms through employment, processing schedules, and local commerce. The plant's cycles ripple outward, affecting broader patterns of activity. Despite this reach, the influence remains subtle. Tea plants do not demand attention. They shape behavior through repetition rather than instruction. This repetition becomes habit. In the end, tea plants shape daily routines by being dependable. Their growth follows understandable patterns. Their needs are steady. By responding to these patterns, people settle into rhythms that feel natural rather than imposed. This quiet shaping reflects the plant's character. The tea plant does not dominate the day. It supports structure without urgency. Through daily care and repeated use, it becomes part of the background that holds routine together. Each day influenced by tea builds on the last. Tasks repeat. Habits settle. Over long periods, these routines define how life unfolds in tea-growing places. The plant's influence is constant but gentle, shaping daily experience without demanding notice. Tea plants are resilient, but they are not indifferent to how they are treated over time. Their long life means that care decisions accumulate, shaping not just the next harvest, but many that follow. When attention is consistent, the plant responds with steady growth. When care becomes irregular, the effects may appear slowly, but they are persistent. Neglect often begins in small ways. A delay in pruning, drainage that is allowed to clog, soil that is no longer replenished with organic matter. None of these changes cause immediate failure. Instead, they introduce mild stress that the plant absorbs at first. This stress compounds, altering how the plant allocates energy. One of the earliest signs of strain appears in recovery after harvest. Healthy tea plants replace removed shoots at a predictable pace. When stressed, this recovery slows. New growth emerges unevenly, and the plant may produce fewer viable shoots in subsequent cycles. This change is gradual, making it easy to overlook at first. Bitterness in the cup is often a delayed signal of this stress. When a tea plant experiences ongoing strain, it may produce higher levels of certain defensive compounds. These compounds protect the plant, but they also influence how leaves behave during processing and brewing. Increased bitterness reflects the plant's response to its environment, rather than an error in preparation. This connection between stress and flavor underscores the importance of long-term care. Leaves do not simply reflect the conditions of the week they were harvested. They carry the imprint of months of growth, then recovery. A period of neglect can influence several harvests before balance is restored. Tea plants respond better to consistency than to correction. Sudden efforts to reverse stress, such as heavy fertilization or aggressive pruning, can worsen imbalance rather than resolve it. The plant integrates changes slowly. Forcing rapid adjustment disrupts internal regulation. Instead, recovery depends on restoring steady conditions. Improving drainage gradually allows roots to regain function. Regular pruning re-establishes even growth over multiple cycles. Soil health improves through repeated additions of organic matter, rather than single interventions. Each step supports the plant's return to balance. Because tea plants are long-lived, they reward this patience. Once stability is restored, growth patterns gradually normalize. Leaves regain balance in their chemical composition. Recovery may not be immediate, but it is reliable when care is sustained. Neglect also affects the structure of the plant. Irregular pruning allows some branches to dominate while others weaken. This uneven structure reduces the efficiency of harvesting and limits airflow, increasing vulnerability to pests and disease. Correcting this structure requires multiple seasons of careful pruning. Water management remains central throughout this process. Tea plants do not tolerate prolonged waterlogging, nor do they thrive under repeated drought. When soil moisture fluctuates widely, roots struggle to maintain function. Restoring balance requires stabilizing water flow rather than reacting to extremes. Soil condition underpins all other aspects of care. Compacted or depleted soil restricts root growth and limits nutrient uptake. This weakens the plant's ability to support healthy leaf production. Rebuilding soil structure is a gradual process involving biological activity that unfolds over years. The plant's response to neglect reflects its broader life strategy. It does not collapse quickly, but it does not forget. Effects linger, influencing growth long after conditions improve. This persistence makes prevention far more effective than repair. In well-managed fields, this long memory works in the plant's favor. Consistent care accumulates positive effects. Roots deepen, growth stabilizes, leaves develop with balance. These benefits compound quietly, supporting reliable production across decades. The contrast between well-maintained and neglected plants becomes more pronounced over time. Early differences may be subtle, but as years pass, fields managed with consistency outperform those subject to irregular attention. This difference is not dramatic in any single season, but it becomes clear across many harvests. Tea plants also communicate their condition subtly. Changes in leaf thickness, color, or recovery speed signal shifts in internal balance. These signals require familiarity to recognize. Growers who work closely with the plant learn to read these cues and respond before problems escalate. Responding early is critical. Small adjustments applied promptly prevent larger disruptions later on. This proactive approach aligns with the plant's slow response time. Acting early allows changes to integrate smoothly, rather than forcing abrupt correction. Neglect often stems from misunderstanding this timing. Expecting immediate results leads to overcorrection. Tea plants do not respond to urgency, they respond to reliability. This mismatch between expectation and biology can create cycles of stress if not recognized. The idea that the plant is resilient but not forgiving captures this dynamic. Tea plants endure variation, but repeated imbalance leaves lasting marks. Their leaves reflect this history, revealing care or neglect through structure and flavor. Over generations, this understanding becomes embedded in practice. Experienced growers prioritize steady routines over dramatic intervention. Fields are monitored regularly. Small issues are addressed before they accumulate. This approach maintains plant health with less effort over time. The tea plant's long life makes it a record keeper. Each season adds another layer of response. Care choices are stored within its structure and chemistry. The plant carries this record forward, influencing future growth. Neglect is never isolated. Its effects ripple outward across time. Likewise, good care compounds. Each season of stability strengthens the plant's capacity to produce balanced leaves in the future. The lesson embedded in the tea plant's response is clear. Long-term attention matters more than intensity. Consistency shapes outcomes more reliably than correction. The plant does not demand perfection, but it does require steadiness. By working with this principle, growers maintain productive fields without constant struggle. Leaves emerge predictably. Harvests remain balanced. Flavor reflects stability rather than stress. The plant responds by continuing its quiet work year after year. Tea plants reward those who understand their timing. They respond to care that is patient and sustained. Neglect leaves traces that cannot be erased quickly. This dynamic makes tea cultivation an ongoing commitment rather than a series of isolated actions. Through this lens, each cup reflects more than recent handling. It reflects a history of attention or absence, integrated slowly into the plant's growth. The tea plant speaks softly, but its message is consistent. Care accumulates, neglect accumulates. Time reveals the difference. Tea begins as a leaf, responding to light, water, and time. That simple origin remains true at every scale, even as the plant's influence extends outward into landscapes, routines, and daily life. The tea plant does not rush this process. It grows steadily, shaped by conditions that repeat rather than change abruptly. This steady pace is what allows it to connect so many elements without strain. From the earliest stages of growth, the tea plant operates through balance. Leaves form gradually, roots expand patiently, and energy is distributed carefully. Nothing happens all at once. This pattern continues across years, allowing the plant to remain productive without exhausting itself. Growth, harvest, and renewal form a loop that repeats quietly, guided by consistency rather than force. Weather plays a constant role in this process. Rainfall supplies water, but only when soil allows it to drain properly. Sunlight provides energy, but only when moderated by temperature and shade. The plant responds to these inputs, not as isolated events, but as patterns that unfold over time. Each leaf reflects a recent chapter in that unfolding, shaped by the conditions present while it formed. Soil anchors this relationship. Beneath the surface, roots interact with minerals, microbes, and moisture in ways that are rarely seen, but always felt. Healthy soil supports steady growth, buffers stress, and allows the plant to respond smoothly to change. Poor soil, by contrast, introduces friction that accumulates quietly. The plant does not collapse, but it carries the effects forward. Human care becomes another layer in this system. Pruning shapes growth. Harvesting removes leaves and signals renewal. Drainage, spacing, and timing influence how the plant allocates energy. These actions do not override the plant's biology. They work within it, guiding responses that already exist. Because tea plants are long-lived, the effects of care and neglect extend far beyond a single season. A well-maintained plant develops stable growth rhythms that persist for years. A neglected plant carries imbalance forward, even after conditions improve. This long memory makes tea cultivation an exercise in patience rather than urgency. Processing continues the same principle. Leaves are guided through changes rather than transformed by force. Withering removes moisture slowly. Rolling opens internal structures. Oxidation proceeds until stopped by heat. Drying stabilizes what has formed. Each step works with physical processes already present in the leaf. Brewing completes this sequence. Water reactivates compounds that were stabilized during drying. Heat allows molecules to move again, briefly revealing aroma, structure, and balance. The cup becomes a momentary expression of months of growth and careful handling. Nothing new is added. What appears has been present all along. This continuity is what links field to cup. The same cause and effect relationships operate at every stage. Light affects growth. Growth affects chemistry. Chemistry affects extraction. Extraction shapes experience. The plant's story does not reset at any point. It carries forward. The tea plant's influence extends beyond agriculture and chemistry. It shapes routines through repetition. Daily harvesting times, processing rhythms, and preparation habits align around the plant's needs. These repeated actions become background structure, guiding life without demanding attention. In tea-growing regions, this structure becomes cultural. Knowledge accumulates through observation rather than instruction alone. Fields are tended across generations. Plants outlive individual caretakers, creating continuity that encourages long-term thinking. Decisions are made with awareness that effects will be felt later. Trade and movement extend the plant's reach. Leaves travel outward from hillsides to distant places, carrying the imprint of their origin. Yet even as tea moves globally, its growth remains fixed to specific environments. This contrast anchors global exchange to local conditions. Despite this reach, the tea plant remains unassuming. It does not dominate landscapes dramatically. It settles into them. Terraces follow slopes. Bushes follow pruning lines. Paths follow repeated movement. These patterns feel natural rather than imposed. What distinguishes the tea plant is not intensity, but reliability. It produces leaves steadily when supported properly. It responds predictably to care. It does not reward extremes. Instead, it reinforces the value of balance applied repeatedly. This quality carries into the experience of tea itself. Brewing invites a pause rather than a rush. The release of aroma is brief. Structure lingers gently. The cup does not demand attention. It supports it. The experience mirrors the plant's own way of operating. As the story of the tea plant comes to a close, what remains is a sense of continuity rather than conclusion. The plant continues growing, leaves continue forming, harvests continue repeating. The system does not end. It carries on quietly, guided by the same principles. Growth slows and resumes. Seasons pass, care accumulates. The tea plant remains, responding patiently to what surrounds it. Its influence extends far beyond the field, yet it never leaves its origin behind. In this final stretch, the pace eases. The details already described settle into a broader picture. Light, water, soil, time and care align without urgency. The plant's steady presence becomes the thread that holds everything together. There is no final transformation, only continuation. The tea plant does not resolve into a single moment. It persists. Each leaf reflects a brief intersection of conditions. Each cup reflects a longer history. Together they form a cycle that repeats quietly. As attention drifts away from specific processes, what remains is the plant itself. An evergreen presence shaped by moderation rather than extremes. Its influence is constant but gentle, expressed through repetition rather than change. This closing moment does not mark an end. It rests briefly as growth continues. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you have enjoyed spending time learning about the tea plant.